Hi everyone, I am so excited to share with y'all something that I have really enjoyed playing with and creating. I'm sure that a lot of you are really familiar with these panels. This is one of the Dream Big panels from Hoffman Fabrics. Isn't it just gorgeous? Well, I love my bright colors. This comes in lots of different colors, so you, I'm sure, can find one that will make you very happy in the color palette that is your favorite. But what I really want to share with you today is how I quilted this panel. So if you'll notice, there's lots of different colors in the panel. So I looked at the panel itself, I looked at the colors that were in the fabric, and I pulled my different embroidery threads from the fabric. If you've watched in any of my other tutorials, you might have heard me say this. Whenever I start choosing colors for a project, a lot of times I'll let my fabric just be my palette. And so with the fabric itself, I can take the colors that are in the fabric and match my threads to the fabric. And that's exactly what I did here. You'll notice how we have some green, we have yellows, some beautiful fuchsias and oranges, and some pretty blues, even some pinks. So what I did is I went around and I pulled embroidery threads to match the different colors that are in my panel. And then I came to my embroidery machine. I have the Babylock Solaris. You may have another machine that has technology in it that's very similar to this one. So you probably will be able to learn some know-how with this also and be able to do this for yourself. So I grabbed that fabric. I created a fabric sandwich. So if you'll kind of notice the edges of the fabric, we have fabric for the front, then we have batting, and then we have a backing. So I created a fabric sandwich. If you're a quilter, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Once I created my fabric sandwich, then I grabbed my largest hoop. My machine, my Solaris, has a 10 5/8 by 16 inch hoop. And whenever I'm quilting with my Solaris, I always like to quilt from the center and work my way to the left or to the right or up and down. But I start in the center first. So I use my largest hoop, not to say later on if you get to the edges and you might want to use a smaller hoop for some of the areas, you can definitely do that. But I'm going to start with my largest hoop, and on this project I did use the largest hoop the whole way through. So if you'll notice in the center of the panel we have smaller petals. So in the center, when I first started, I was able to hoop it and be able to scan and find that I could scan more than one petal at a time. So when we scan to create our designer quilting fills in each petal, we want to make sure that we get a full petal. We don't want to do partial petals. Now, later on, if you do something a little differently than what I've done, definitely you can mix it up. You can get creative. You have a creative license. I give you a creative license. Do it how you would like. But the way I did it, I made sure I could visually see a full petal at a time. So if you'll notice that I have an outline around my petals. I've watched Alyssa Burke. She's a mixed media artist and I love her work. I'll link down in the description. Alyssa is amazing. She's written books. She just gets in there and plays with color and draws. And so this is she was kind of my inspiration of how I wanted to do this. And a lot of times when she draws, she always does a dark outline on the outlines of her florals, and she loves to draw lots of florals. So when you look at her artwork, you're going to see lots and lots of florals. But with this, so I kept that in mind. So when I did my quilting motifs, I wanted to do a distinct black outline around each petal. And as we get over to the machine, I'll show you how I did that. But that was kind of my inspiration. I love the way she creates. I love her artwork. And I thought, okay, I'm going to use that concept of how Alyssa does her floral drawings and then she outlines them. So I did. I outlined with a black on the outer edges of the petal. And it really gives you a separation. So when your eyes looks at the panel itself and the quilting fills, you can really see where the panels are separated with those black outlines. So yeah, I want to see a full petal or 2 full petals if I can get more than one in on a hooping. And then as I get to the outer edges of my panel, it got to the point to where I would take and center one of those large petals right there in the middle. So when I scanned, I always focused on a complete petal. Okay, I'm so excited to show you how I did that. I'm going to go over some of the features in the machine on how to scan and how to create those outlines on the petals themselves. It really is very easy to do. What I like to call this is kind of fussy scanning. Have you heard of fussy cutting? This is what I call fussy scanning, because I'm going to scan and want to get a really distinct outline around each one of those petals, because I'm going to do the fill, but I also want to incorporate that outline. So you'll see how that happens. So you'll see as we get started, you'll see what icons on my machine that I'm touching and using, and we'll just kind of go over that. And I'm sure by the time we get through with the tutorial, I hope that you'll grab one of your panels and try the same thing. Maybe you have other panels that you want to quilt like this. You could definitely do that also. All right, let's go have some fun and let's create. So I've hooped my fabric sandwich like we talked about earlier in my largest hoop, and I'm sliding the embroidery hoop onto the embroidery arm. Then I'm going to just take my locking lever, bring it forward and down, and that's going to attach it to the hoop. We're going to go over to the machine and we'll touch the area that says IQ Designer. And then we're going to touch the icon for scanning. We'll choose Image Scan. We'll touch Scan and OK. And you'll notice how the screen says Recognizing. What's going to happen next, what's happening right now, is the hoop is going to move forward and backwards, and it's capturing an image of what's in our hoop. So your machine is taking a picture of what is in the hoop. And in a moment, you're going to see me show you a mouse that you use with a computer. It's a wired mouse, and we want to use a wired mouse because that's going to plug into the port on the right hand side of the machine that's designated for a wired mouse. You'll see the little image on the side of your machine. I find that using the wired mouse is going to give me much more accuracy and ease whenever I'm creating my fills and the outer lines, the barrier lines that I want to use to place the fills into. So now on the screen you see my petals appearing. I'm going to go up here and I'm going to show you also, there's my mouse that I used. I'm going to show you up here in the upper right hand corner. You'll see the little zigzag. We're going to touch that area, and that's where we get to choose the different line properties or the tools. We're going to use our point-to-point tool. I chose my bean stitch line feature. We'll touch OK. And then I was looking on my screen and I noticed, oh, for my last project, I still have the outer outline, that square of my 4x4 hoop. I was doing a project before this. So you're going to see me go up to the top of the screen and touch my settings page key. And then I can go ahead and just kind of turn those pages. See at the bottom how I'm turning the pages? Until I get to the page where I can set the line for what hoop I'm using. And I selected the large one. You'll notice that I'm in millimeters. I'm going to also show you how to pop over 2 inches. So I just turned the page to where I found the unit measurement and I chose inches. So here you see now 10 5/8 by 16 inches. And that allows us not to have any lines on the screen, so we'll have a better view. So we want to outline the outer edges of the petals. And we're going to start on the petal that I'm moving my mouse around. I can even darken the view or lighten it. So I darkened it a little bit. When we want to enlarge, I'm going to enlarge it a little bit so I can see more clearly. And once I enlarge, I can select that panning feature, that pan key, and place my finger on the screen and move around the area of the petal that we're looking at. So I'm going to touch my point-to-point tool once again. When it's blue, that means it's selected. Now you'll notice when I start clicking with my mouse, I lightened it a little bit there for you so you could see even better. When we start clicking with our mouse, I can click and drag. So I tend to get, that's kind of a habit I've gotten into. I'll click, not necessarily right where I want it to be, but just kind of a little to the left or the right or above or below. I'll click, I'll hold it, and then I'll drag, and then I'll just release on my mouse. So we're going to go in, we're going to do that many times until we get around this little petal. Now I'm going to touch my pan icon, place my finger on the screen, and move the image to where I can see better, see clearly the next part of the petal. I touch the point-to-point icon once again, and so we're going to click and drag and release. Click, drag, and release. Click, click, drag, and release. Click, drag, and release. So we can do that over and over. Now here I'm going right on the end, on the edge. So if you feel like you can accurately just click your mouse right on the point that you want it, you don't have to drag it. You can just click right on it. So I've chosen that point, that panning tool once again, move the image over, selected the point to point, click and just drag and drop the point, click, drag and drop the point. You get a little bit of practice doing this. You'll notice that when I click my mouse, it's holding on to that line. So I'm holding my finger on my left click of my mouse. And I can drag the line to make it longer, or I can drag it further down. See how I'm going down and then back up and then drop it. So as long as you're holding your finger on that left click of your mouse, you're holding on to the line, and you can stretch it or move it where you want it before you release it. Now I feel like I need to enlarge it even more and then move it around so I can see it more clearly. Point to point selected again. Click, drag and drop, click, drag and drop. Here in a few minutes you're going to see that I feel like I didn't get it as accurately as I wanted to. And at the bottom of my screen there's two little undo, little curves with arrows on them, kind of little U-turns that go left and right with little arrows on them, and that allows you to undo and redo. So here we go. I'm going to undo and undo. I think I undo again. Yep, a couple of times. And now I can click and get really accurate right there on the point. Pretty easy. Once you start playing with it, it's kind of mesmerizing. I find it a bit relaxing because I just like doing little kind of meticulous things like this. So choosing that pan tool, notice that when I choose the pan key, that the point-to-point key deactivates. So you'll notice how when I'm doing that, I'll always go back and choose that point-to-point key again. So when it's blue, that means it's selected. When it's not, then it's not selected. So once again, we're just going to continue around the petal that I'm outlining right now until we get all the way around. Just a moment, I'm going to go up and choose that pan tool, slide my finger on the screen, choose my point-to-point tool once again, and then just continue on. So notice how that line can be stretched long or short. I find that when I keep it short, I do that when I'm going, I want to be really accurate. Maybe I'm going over around a corner or a curve, and I just want to choose little increments at a time. But if I have a really long line, like you're going to see me do here in just a moment, I can go all the way up to that point and click, because that's more of just like a long straight line. I don't need to go in little bitty bites. So we're getting close to where we started, and the moment we get to the place where we started and we click close to that area, when you're using that point-to-point tool, it automatically closes that line. So now I'm going to zoom out to where I can see the full image of what we just did in real time, so 100%. You'll see those outlines all the way around the petal that we're playing with. Now we're going to go in and choose one of our specialty fills, one of those beautiful designer fills. I'm going to choose the third icon with the circles, and then we'll touch select, and that brings us in to where we can choose one of these fills. Yes, we've got so many to choose from, so I get to choose which one. Now you may have more or you may have less than what I have, who knows, okay? Maybe later on you might have more, I don't know. I chose the circle, and I can change up, I can do some edits on that circle, but before we do that, I think I forgot, oh, I didn't show you to touch OK, so I'm going back and just showing you after you select your circle, touch OK. And now we need to select our fill cup. And with the little bucket there that's underneath the area that we chose the circles, it has to be highlighted in blue, and then you're going to touch in the middle of your petal, and that applies your circles, your fill that you've selected in the center of that petal. Now let's make some other changes. I'm going to go in and click on the first one, and that's where I can change the size. I felt like the petals were a bit smaller, so I wanted to bring the size down, and then we'll click OK. The next one is the angle. So I went in there and chose the angle to change the direction to 60 degrees. Click OK. You'll notice it's going to look a little different. We still have circles, but I wanted to kind of even mix it up more. So then I chose the random shift icon and brought it up to 3. That's the max. Touch OK. And now you're going to see that it looks like pebbles, so kind of like micro quilting. And at the bottom, there's a thickness icon. You may have that, you may not have that. And that'll create less stitch intensity. Now you'll notice I'm using the arrow. I'm going to arrow over to our line features, and we're going to set the stitch length, how long the stitch is. And before I do that, I'm going up to the settings page to change my measurement back over to metric, because I find that for myself, how long a stitch is makes more sense to me to do it in millimeters. So I've set it to 2.5. 2.6 would be a nice length too. You can experiment with that. Once I've changed that, then I'm going to go ahead and click set. You'll touch OK, and then you'll touch set, and now once again we're going to touch OK. And now this brings us over to the embroidery side of the machine. So you'll notice here what's going to stitch first is our decorative fill that we've created, and then after that is going to be your outline. You'll just load whatever thread color is your favorite for whatever project you're working on, whatever petal you might be stitching in. Just coordinate your thread with the petal, and you're going to let it stitch. So this is a great time for you to grab a cup of tea, a cup of coffee, whatever your favorite beverage is, and just sit back and relax and just watch it stitch for a little while. Isn't it just so relaxing when your machine is stitching? I find that definitely when an embroidery machine is stitching, it just places people they're just in awe. So they're just kind of mesmerized. They're going to stop and stare. It's just so pretty when it's stitching also. You could, if you wanted to, you could think about other panels that you might have. I have a baby quilt that I've used also this technique on. It has a big elephant on a panel, and I was able to create my stitching, my quilting in the different areas of the elephant exactly where I wanted it and exactly how I wanted it. So this gives you definitely the ability to create designer quilting, fussy quilting possibly, you might want to call it that, exactly where you want it. Look how beautiful that is. Now it's time to stitch the outline. I'm going to go ahead and thread up my machine with the black thread. So that's going to give it that distinct outline with black. Black's going to really show up on the outer edges of the petal once it's stitched. We'll go ahead and touch the start button and let it start stitching. And you'll just see how now that outline is just going to travel on those outer edges of the petal. Remember, that's where we were clicking. And we were just kind of moving it where we wanted to and dropping it. And that created that distinct outline right on the outer edges of the petal. I hope this tutorial was helpful for you, and I hope it's inspired you, giving you maybe some education and some knowledge. Get a little more comfortable with using some of the features in your machine if you have a machine similar to mine also. Definitely I hope that this has kind of intrigued you to get in there and do some of this scanning and creating those fills exactly where you want them. So if you enjoyed this tutorial, I definitely look forward to seeing you in another tutorial. Click that subscribe button and definitely click the bell if you want to be notified whenever I upload any more YouTube videos. Thank you so much for spending some time with me. Be blessed. I hope this tutorial was helpful for you. Please click that like button and don't forget to subscribe. I'm going to have my Facebook group, my Instagram, and my YouTube channel noted here at the end, so definitely pop over there, like, join, subscribe, and hopefully I will see you next time on the next tutorial.